Hi, everyone. Welcome to Poet. I'm Radha Marcum, and today I have the pleasure of talking to poet Starr Davis, who is the author most recently of the book Affidavit. Before I introduce you to Starr, I'd like to invite you to become a subscriber of Poet to Poet on Substack if you aren't already. Just go to poettopoet.substack.com and subscribe for free. In it, you'll find interviews like this one, plus helpful ideas on writing and publishing books of poetry. So today, again, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Starr Davis. Starr Davis is the author of the forthcoming poetry collection Affidavit from Hanging Loose Press, which is the winner of the Founders Prize. And she's also the author of the memoir I Am Mostly Bad Blood, which is from Autumn House Press. And that also is coming out this year. And that was the winner of the 2024 Autumn House Nonfiction Prize. Her writing has appeared in the Kenyon Review, the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, and Palette Poetry, where she won third place in the 2023 Sappho Prize for Women Poets. She serves as creative nonfiction editor at Tri-Quarterly and is a fellow both the Center for Art and Advocacy and the Texas After Violence Project. Originally from Columbus, Ohio, and now based in Houston, Texas, she holds an MFA from City College of New York and a BA from the University of Akron. Her work explores motherhood, justice, and survival. So, Starr, such a joy to welcome you to Poet to Poet.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this. This is my debut. So this is the first book I've written that's being published. That has been published. Oh God. Sorry.
Well, congratulations, and what a debut. I'm so excited to talk to you about the story behind this book. Each book has a unique story, and a debut especially often has a very unique story. So why don't we start there with, the seed of this collection? So was there a single moment? There's a lot of documentation that supports this book. Was there a document or an experience that made you think this has to be a book? So what was the first piece that what was the first piece that you wrote that felt like it, um, you know, broke open this territory?
Yeah, I love that question. Broke open. Um, it just triggered a memory for me. The first poem that I wrote ever of this collection, and it wasn't originally like I didn't set out while I was fighting custody, while I'm
Mm.
in court. No, I didn't set out to go, hey, let me write a poetry book right now. This was oh, I'm trying to find it. This was the first poem that I wrote where I just knew I had to write through the experience. So this was just a poem that was sort of like birthed out of what I felt was a new experience. And I guess I'm trying to kind of trying to word that. A new experience to me and anyone who I know well.
Mm.
I've never witnessed anyone fight in court like anything. I had never been in court, so being under a custody order where I had to share time with my daughter and that first visitation period birthed this poem, which is called Ars Poetica on Masters, and it's actually this was the poem that I wanted to be first in the collection because it was first.
Mm.
And this was a huge memory for me. Um, I've never experienced having to share a child, something that felt so mine. She looked like me. I mean, it
Mm.
just there were so many emotions happening that day. And I'm just looking back on this poem, and I don't know if you want me to read this or not,
Would
but
you like to? We would love to hear it.
I would love to open our conversation with this because it feels so fresh and important. This was like a huge moment for the collection. So this is Ars Poetica on Masters 1. Love opens into another kind of world, a place my girl child finds her color is the sun's favorite, a place she finds the black of my nipple is spring, a place the cicada's song drowns out the voice of God, a place where the rubble of his car engine dismantles all faith, a place where her cry opens a place in the crevice of my neck. Love opens its mouth only to say, have her back by 4. The girl child becomes object, and love opens into another kind of dangerous act that requires prayer. Girl child finds the earth of her co-author's eyes to be a place too tricksome to trust, a place where she is exchanged under a Texan sun from one car to next, a place where only diamonds can be forged and swords refined, a place her tongue is discovered and her hands reach for me, a place I become animal, risky, apprehensive, and she becomes cub, ferocious, wild. Love opens into a kind of government, a place where I look my abuser in the eye and hand him over the flesh we created. This becomes poetry, a place where hands once around my throat become hands that balance girl child in one and diaper bag in other, a place where she cannot see that I am no longer mommy. I am Lavinia without hands or tongue or breast milk or answers, but just a woman closing in around herself. So that
Mm. There's
that's
so much in that, so much. And I'm really struck by the not only the situation, and the sparking incident, right? Or what is it called in fiction? There's probably a better word for it,
I
right?
know
Inciting
there's a
incident,
term out
right?
there.
Yeah. Um, but also by the language choice and tell me if I'm misquoting, but I think you said there's a line like love becomes a kind of government. Is that the
Yes,
line? Or love
yes,
becomes
that's the
government?
line.
And that sort of assonance between the vowel sound between love and government and the tension between the
Yes.
emotional and the legal
Mhm.
parts of our lives, which really, is the, to me, the foundation of what happens throughout this collection. So I wonder, since you and I are now, kind of in the poems together, if you might take the listener or the reader through the arc of the book, and so it started in this place, and how does it unfold, and what becomes the territory of this collection as it unfolds.
Yeah, so the collection began in form of the Ars Poetica, and I'm so happy to discuss this. It started in form. It did. I wrote a series of Ars Poetica. So this is just the first one. There's another one. And I hoped there would be a series of them. I think I have about 4 or 5 of them in here. And I hope that would fill the entire collection. Like maybe it would be a chapbook or something. I wasn't I wasn't thinking this big yet. I wasn't there with
Mhm.
those. It was a small fire. And as as those as the series of the Ars Poetica, which is really an interesting form in and of itself, because I'm not sure where to draw the line between an Ars Poetica and an affidavit,
Mm,
because to me, Ars Poetica being a poem about a poem is still nothing but just one big testimony about the poet, which is just a testimony. So, um, I began the Ars Poetica as a means of advocating for myself as a writer again, becoming a mom. And I'm not saying my story is so different, but I became a mom at 30.
mm,
I'm not a little girl anymore, right?
mm,
We're a big girl now, but that was still a huge shift from going to just identifying myself for so many years as just, oh, I just like to write, or I just write sometimes, to, oh, now I'm a mom, but I think I used to be a writer. I think I used to do that, and I should have been calling myself a writer, because now I really need to be one. Um, just for leveling up in my life and my career. So, um, I wrote those poems as a way to write back to myself about myself. And they became, and what was coming was nothing but my custody battle. And that was all that was pouring out from me at the time. So, kind of how the book started to evolve was I was aware that form was something that was going to possess the entire collection.
mm,
Like I knew I needed form for myself. I wasn't really worried about how others would interpret the book. I knew I had a collection or a series of many different poems in form that were all kind of having conversations with each other.
mhm.
Um, it's so scary to think about myself. Like I think I'm talking to myself in many different formats here, and that's just how it evolved.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, there was something so powerful about that. I think of that act of witnessing the self and birthing an identity or birthing a kind of consciousness around the daughter, the custody, etc. You feel. Um, I don't think the reader, speaking personally, the reader doesn't feel that it's a kind of you know totally internal self-reflection, and yet that self-reflection really opens out into the experience that, as you say, you're not the only mother, right? And certainly others have been through the court system in different ways. But so I'm curious to dig a little bit deeper on the form and this title of affidavit. um, an affidavit we think of as a kind of it's a statement of truth, right?
Yeah.
In in the eye of the law in government. Poetry has its own kind of style of truth telling. How did those modes work together or not work together for you? And how did that form open up possibilities if it did?
Yeah, I'm thinking about whereas and
Mm.
just how, and even Citizen, these are my mentors. So these,
So whereas Layli Long Soldier, I'll just put
yes.
that in there for folks who aren't, yeah.
And,
And
and and I'm even gonna go far as being a bit more poetic. And I'm not gonna say they're not poetic, but I'm gonna go as far as just the my range is so strange. Even Hybrida, by Tina Chang, and just watching just so many amazing writers over the years and poets just not be afraid to go, this is going to be hybrid. This is going to be a docu poem. This is not going to be a poem, but it'll be prose. Like this is, and I'm an MFAer. I'm born out of this too. I'm crazy too. So I'm aware, I was kind of aware that the affidavit, which is a form that was prosed to me by a lawyer, right? I'm not
Mhm.
in class when someone presents the affidavit to me. I'm aware, I'm aware that I have to testify to something that happened to me that I wasn't ready to put in words yet. Um, my daughter's about 3 months when I'm having to formulate an affidavit statement. And the lawyer was aware I was a writer, and they actually told me to just go look up what an affidavit is, find a free form online, plug it in, and send it back. I'm a poet. I'm looking at these templates online and I'm thinking, what is this? This is supposed to tell my story. There's not enough lines here. Um, and of course, they told me I could write out my story. Additionally, I had to go through about maybe 10 drafts of an affidavit before we finalized it because I didn't understand the form. I didn't like it. I didn't like where I was. I didn't like that I was in court. I
Mm,
didn't like being a new mom in court, having
mm,
to say I'm a mom in so many different ways, which is actually what I was doing. And it was frustrating. Um, I found um, a lot of peace in sort of disappearance and silence entering into the court system. Um, a lot of people just told me to listen to my lawyer, and it almost put me in a category of I'm listening to a lawyer, so then I'm no longer thinking for myself.
mm,
I'm trusting a lawyer to think for me. Poetry became sort of here is where I get to still think for myself. Or maybe here is where I still get to experiment with advocating for myself, which is what I really wanted was advocacy. I wanted my lawyer to advocate. I wanted to advocate. I wanted to be heard and protected. So the affidavit form, I kind of twisted it into what I needed it to be. I couldn't use these in court, but they made it into the book. But here we are. I'm glad that like form is sort of carrying the book through as I like what you said earlier when we were chatting just about how it's holding as a container for some really hard, difficult conversations. Conversations that I hope people continue to have when they're reading the book.
mm. Yeah, yeah. Beautifully said. Did you have a particular reader in mind? I mean, you described it earlier as, something you're writing for yourself, but did you think, okay, well, did you imagine the audience at some point?
Um, no. Oh my goodness. I hope I'm not the only one who has this answer. Um, I'm going to say no. I
Hmm.
didn't think about a reader. I didn't have time.
Hmm.
Khadijah Queen has a powerful essay where she talks about solo mothering. And at the time that this collection was being written, I was in the thick of solo mothering, but also survival mothering. I'm in crippling fear mothering for the first time, and just in a system, like alongside a system that feels very intimidating to me. I mean, it was intimidating. It turned out to be all the monster I knew it was. I'm talking about just the family court system, the
Yeah.
system. Um, but yeah, I think yeah, sorry.
Don't apologize at all. I mean, I think this is a brilliant answer because it's very honest. And, oftentimes I think the best poetry does come from that, that
Yeah,
that deep need
yeah,
to acknowledge where one is. And that,
thank you.
like you said, that tension between the
Mhm.
government and the love, the that system and the real living, breathing,
Yes.
experience that you express in the poems.
It took a lot of courage to go, this is something that deserves to be talked about out loud. What happened to me, I think happens all across the world, not even just here. I think women having children have always been facing obstacles and challenges. Um, just especially powerful women, when strong women have children, I don't know, it's just like life will do anything to tear them down. And I'm aware because I'm built on these stories myself. But I now feel indebted to talk about the injustices, and I now feel sort of like indebted to like a bigger message, and not trying to say I didn't think about the reader. I'm now just thinking about like the harm out there. I just didn't think about a person as opposed to just a cycle of harm. And how do I infiltrate this in a way artistically where I can help, So I don't know where this book will land. It feels so specific, like it belongs in specific places with specific people, and yet I know it's common.
Mm, yeah,
And I know anyone could relate to something in here. And yet I'm just hoping though that this just breeds more conversation for change. For
yeah.
change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it shines a really powerful light on all of those things that the personal and, as you're saying, the political, the historical, the larger context in which all these personal experiences are happening. So I just think it's a brilliant example of a work that transcends that personal. Um, would you like to read another poem, maybe?
Oh yeah. Hmm. Oh, I think I want to read one of the Affidavit poems. And this is a poem I actually really love. It makes me think about my daughter. Um, this is Affidavit 2. I'm just laughing a bit because just speaking about form and also thinking about the reader. This was a poem that I actually wrote while I was in a not in a poetry workshop, but I was in a creative nonfiction workshop. But I knew that the affidavit form itself was not going to be prose or essay. I kind of knew from this poem that they would be poems. So this is Affidavit 2. A sworn statement. I, a resident of succulent places, both mental and physical, came and appeared estological as a woman, pastured by papayas and pendergrass records and predators, both flesh and spirit, under penalty and personal knowledge that few or all ecclesiastical things are correct. The imperial rule of my hips conjured a dream that could not be undreamt. All men in my life have been mostly theory, less Bible. Niggas that I could love on accident and leave on purpose, however. This one, a consequence of the unhealed in hotel rooms after tangerine suns bleed graceless, took my dream hostage for a night, choked my last sweetest memory until I could not taste any remnants of the most fabricated joy I could say I've witnessed. He is by law the nigga my mama never warned me about because he is the nigga we are born making excuses for. Days before I delivered this dream, this dream of mine. I thought of calling the police, but he said to me in my little dream that we would be dead before they found us. And so the drafted petition for domestic violence, still etched in my bones, is opaque. The movement, who is mostly flesh, not spirit, is not within the best interest of any dreams of mine.
Mm. Again, so much to take in in a small space. I'm curious if you have some thoughts about you're a prose writer and nonfiction, is
Yeah.
something that you're an expert in. How do you think about the relationship between prose and lyricism? Is
Yeah.
your prose as lyric as your poetry is in some way?
Actually, no. I love essay and long form. I love journalism was actually my major. I'm an investigative reporter, probably by nature inside of myself. I enjoy learning and I have a huge fascination with like archival storytelling. I love to see poets working with archives. I love to see writers work with archives, period. Um, my fiance is a photographer and I notice even photographers work with archives and I just love to sort of I don't know, be that person to go, I'm not going to let this die. Like, I'm not going to. And I feel like people like Toni Morrison, who, yes, she wrote a lot of fiction, but also in my head, a lot of those stories are real, you know? It's been really hard for me to switch genre in my head, you know? It's hard to go it's hard to name something that comes from you. It's just hard, you know. But I will say, where I'm kind of drawing the distinction is I know when I'm sitting down to write poetry, I'm being intentional about being creative. Not to say when I'm sitting down to write prose, I'm not. I just know that when I'm sitting to write prose, I need to be more vulnerable to the story and the facts.
Mm.
I really I'm a truth teller and a storyteller, like at the end of the day, and that's so important to me in a longer form. But in poetry, I like to have fun. I like to remember, like, this is a visual field. I get to play here. I don't have to stay in the margins. I don't have to make it all make sense, but it can be here, you know? So yeah.
What a great answer. And I would love to dig more into this relationship between journalism and storytelling in that field and also what that brings to poetry because I think some of you mentioned several writers who have also done this in their work, Layli Long Soldier, Claudia Rankine. I mean, there's dozens, and I think we have wonderful foremothers in that sense. Um, but I like I just resonate so much with what you're saying about, truth telling being, adhering to facts, and yet poetry has these other possibilities within it that can be maybe equally as illuminating on some level. I mean, certainly I feel that with your work. So, um, yeah, it's such an interesting territory to, that overlap.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. And I'm also thinking about like Terrence Hayes with the sonnet, but let me go back. Wanda Coleman with the sonnet, and
yes.
just how we've seen poets take form and expand them. I mean, you can do that. And I love that about poetry. And I hoped I kind of was able to nod, to some of my my poet mentors in a way, in this collection because I used to be someone who shied away from form. I used to want to be more of a spoken word poet, someone who was more of a lyricist, like you said. And I think where I drew the line is probably in my MFA program when I just fell in love with the literary world. I really, really did. I felt my strongest on paper, not to say my voice isn't something, but I just knew I didn't want it to feel like performance. I just wanted it to be real and written down.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Right. Sort of a um, alignment with voice in a larger
yes.
sense
Yeah.
than just a lyric
Yes,
voice.
very much.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you brought up Wanda Coleman. She's such a powerful
Ah,
foremother that am constantly returning to.
yes. She doesn't get talked about enough.
No, yeah, I agree. So let's
Yeah.
let's say her name and read her work
Yes,
and keep it alive.
very much.
So maybe to talk a little bit about the logistics of how this came together. So how long did it take you to write all the poems that are collected here? And then, additionally, how long did it take to then assemble the collection?
So it took 2 years. It took
Lightning
2
speed.
years. Oh my goodness. I was living and writing at the same time, and I sort of allowed myself to live and write this at the same time. And I had to say it like that because some poets or just writers in general, I will go back and say me. This is how I used to be. I didn't want to write about anything until I lived through it.
Mm,
I never lived through any of this. I'm still going. I'm still going. I'm living it. This was unnerving.
hmm
It's very bold, revolutionary work I was doing that I wouldn't recommend because I think there was an urgency. I
hmm
like to almost categorize myself as a social justice writer, and
hmm
I've had social justice fellowships through Pen America, through Haymarket Books, and I'm grateful because these organizations like support writers who are urgently writing, and this is what I was doing. I'm having a lived experience that was also urgently being written about and that everyone in my life was witnessing in real time. And it was also painful. I wasn't just battling custody. My daughter was then taken from me because my ex won custody. And that was a complex issue, you know. And while I was living without my daughter for over a year, I was writing this. And I'm grateful for hanging loose and even for Haymarket Books, because when Hanging Loose told me that they had selected me for their Founders Prize, there was a lot of back and forth because of my anxiety, because of my fear, and also because I knew I was still writing it. And I'm like, whoa, this is still being written. They gave me time. So I'd like to say it took me about 2 years' time to finalize the publication. But I would say prior to me sending it out for submission, I had to been writing this for about 3 years before. And
hmm
I would just say that because there is a poem or two in here that lands that has been written, I think in 2019 or 2018 before I had a child. So what I love about the title of my book and why it's fitting is because if I'm being honest, my original poems, which were the Ars Poeticas, they set out to be sort of just me wanting to tell my story. Let me just cut my light on. It randomly storms in Houston sometimes, and it's starting to do that now. Um, but I wanted it to just be me testifying about my life, what I've been through, and the new poems and the old sort of made sense. I felt like I'm still laying down foundation. Everything is still here. So yeah, it took some time after the press got it, but to me, I think it still made it out in pretty good time, if I could
Oh, I
say
think I think this is remarkable speed actually for poetry and I think that's about the quickest any poet could hope for.
oh
I
yeah.
mean, not that speed is what we're going for, right?
No.
But it's interesting what you're saying about sort of the writing and living happening simultaneously. I think there are different approaches to material, right? And I mean, we talked about archives, right? And
Yes.
archives can kind of be an excavation, right? And so it could like poems could be, really looking backwards, but that's not what's happening here. The territory of this book is so present moment, like day by day, experience by experience. And it gives it a kind of, as you said, urgency and aliveness that a simple, like looking back and putting pieces together, which is a lot of what we do in journalism, right? That wouldn't have the kind of impact that you're talking about or that we experience. So I think that's a really, I mean, it's just fascinating to see how process and also the result of that process are really in line with one another.
Yes. Thank you so much for stating that. Mhm.
Would you like to read maybe one more poem?
Oh, I would love to. I guess I'm thinking as you were talking, I was thinking about this poem, Non-Custodial. Just going back to sort of like form and also just time. Um, and just the shifts of what was happening while I was writing. So the collection that started off being confessional, you know, not a mother yet, just confessional. Um, and then leaning into poems that are more confessional but almost targeted. Um, like I'm confessing, specific things about motherhood and things of that nature. Um, I moved from being what I just felt was a mom to being a non-custodial parent, which became such a huge, like, dark cloud over my head. And that shift kind of broke form for me outside of poetry. And I began writing and blogging under a Substack called Notes from a Non-Custodial Mom.
Hmm.
And that Substack really saved my life while my daughter was gone. I just was, like you said, documenting each day. But I wrote this poem from sort of out of that experience called Non-Custodial. And this is one of those poems that did get written after I won the Founders Prize. And I just wanted to note that I was so grateful for good editors who were aware I was having a real lived experience and who gave me time to go, do you want to add some more poems or is this it? And I got a sort of a brief like hiatus period with my press to sort of heal and reimagine after my daughter came back, which
Hmm.
was amazing. Um, you know, it was amazing to be with a press that had sort of like witnessed the trauma, but also the reunification. And they witnessed my full circle moments and gave me time.
Hmm.
So I was grateful. So this poem is called Non-Custodial. Non-custodial. Adjective. A parent who does not have physical custody of his or her minor child as the result of a court order. There is a dream where I am in a wheat field in the next life or so. chasing my daughter in an essence of her toddler state as if we might live out our eternal days in some type of sun-kissed sun or some type of sun-kissed. We may never touch again in this room. And she is undeniably mine in a way that is unacknowledged. She is legally bound to anything other than my shadow. And even in that darkness, she is still warm beneath my own uncertainties. I think that is called motherhood, the ability to be wildly uncertain and remain a figurehead for formal constructs known as home. We body these bodies past the metaphysical. In this dream, there's only a forever belonging to this moment. And I wondered if it were necessary to dream such dreams the day after a court orders my child to live primarily with her father. If only we could live somewhere in the supernatural realm, somewhere without law against flesh, a place only a mother and a child could go without getting caught.
Mm.
Oh,
It's sometimes really hard for me to say anything after a poem like that. I mean, it's kind of choking me up a little bit.
oh yeah,
Um,
actually, me too. Sorry.
no, no, don't apologize. That's what we come to poetry for. And certainly
Mhm.
this book, I think lots of readers will be finding that quality. Um, so is there anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you would like to say to our audience, before we close out?
Yeah, I just wanted to just briefly highlight going back to the arc of my book. I love that question so much because the beginning and how I sort of organized it, because it is so heavy, and I do get a lot of questions of how were you writing this? How did you do that? And, how do you organize poetry on an emotional level? And I really decided that um it was best for me to begin where it hurt the most.
Mm,
It was just best for me to like throw out my heaviest artillery of just what really happened. And at the end, and I do hope people love my poems at the end, but towards the end, I begin to work in sort of the complexity of the fact that I did find love, peace, that my daughter did come home, which is the last poem of my book. You know, I'm hoping that there's not like too much pity from the collection as there is, oh, there maybe is some justice out there. And damn, there is justice out there. And I hope, even though this is like really harsh, important stuff to talk about, I hope that without being too emotional to say this, I hope people know they have a chance at justice
mm,
because I've gotten it, and I didn't fall into the stereotypical loopholes of I didn't have, you know, that bad of a story, because it did come back around full circle. So I just wanted to say, like, I wasn't afraid to go, I want soft with the hard. I want some beautiful things next to the ugly things. I took a wild chance, and so did my editor. My editor, who's great, Joanne, she told me, like, put some love poems in there. Like, talk about Texas, talk about what's really going on. I think that adds, versatility about the book. Like, she encouraged me to go, this is life, put it in there. And I got a chance to do that. So, and those are poems I'm really proud about. Not to say I'm not proud of the Affidavit poems, but I wrote some new ones towards the end that felt like, softer poems to land on. And I hope everyone enjoys them.
Absolutely. I think that that combination of, or that just what you were saying, it's life, right? It is life. We have these, injustice exists alongside moments of justice,
Yeah,
right?
I
And
have a
the
love sonnet in here, girl. And I'm like, can I write a love sonnet? And they actually they put it there. I was so
absolutely.
happy. I was so happy about that, which I guess was just to throw out to the listeners that there are some important poems being written, but I hope the beauty of poetry stays with us because it can feel lost in a really harsh world.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
to be an artist is to reach for something beautiful once in a while. So
Yes.
I got a chance to do that, and those poems made it in there.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful, very full collection. I mean, there are so many wonderful angles to look at this work through. So I'm sure we could probably go on for another, hour or two. At least from my side, so many things to admire and talk about. But maybe in closing, is there some way that people can find you? You mentioned your Substack. Do you want to mention a
Yes.
website or social handle?
Yes, I am an Instagram girly, I guess for now. I'm on Blue Sky as well, and I can be searched Starr Davis Poet, or for Instagram, I am writer dot mama, MAMA. And on Substack, my Substack is now titled Witness Statement, but
Mm,
I can still be searched by email, Starr Davis Poet or Starr Davis, but it is under the handle Witness Statement. And I told you I'm still living through it. So my Substack is indebted and all subscribers paid. My fees go towards my court fees and still climbing out of such a harsh time of fighting for custody for my daughter for 5 years. So,
yeah,
yes, I still vent and talk about that experience there. So, any support is welcome.
great. Well, I'm just going to encourage everybody to go subscribe to your Substack. And by the way, Star is with two R's.
Yes, you are.
Just in case folks are listening and don't see it visibly there. And also to go buy the book. So Hanging Loose Press is the publisher, and they also have, just a tremendous list of authors. But I hope everybody will go out and buy Star's book and read this tremendous collection. So, Star, thank you so much for your time today. It's been
Thank
such a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.